then you end up with some weird Netflix documentary about you, how you're this like creepy company that just does a bunch of bizarre shit, and I don't know that any of us want to go down that. I don't want to go down that path.
Welcome to 33 Tangents, a weekly podcast featuring a rotating panel of co-hosts that all work together in the same company but live in different areas of the world. The discussions cover a wide variety of topics from digital analytics to working remotely to current happenings in business and technology. Our regular day-to-day conversations often go off in various directions, and the goal of this podcast is to share our ideas and find new ways to engage with others. So what's going on today? What's new?
It's cold.
It's actually humid here today. The rain came through and it brought all this humidity, so it's like high 60s and humid. So I actually kicked on the AC for a bit just to get the humidity out.
Well, I was just out back trying to get some sun, and I saw a bird fly over. And then I saw something jump off this rock underneath a bush in my backyard and make all sorts of noise trying to bury itself in leaves. So I'm kind of freaking out about what kind of rodent's back there.
Oh, no.
So there you go. That's my morning.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not as scary as Hila's Little Shop of Horrors, but it's close.
Did I miss something?
Yeah, I have this plant that's like
it's amazing.
It's a viney plant, and it's kind of like taking over the patio. And now it's kind of crawled over the last few weeks. It crawled through the cracks in the door, like between the sliding door, and it's come into my office now. And it's crawling against the top part of the wall, and it's trying to go into the hallway. So it's pretty elaborate.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's gonna grab me at some point. So,
and that is a perfect little story to talk about on Halloween of all days.
Seriously.
Yeah, I figured that was a good one for today, and a good 80s, right? 80s flashback.
Yeah, 80s.
Phoebe Seymour.
Man, the 80s, man. I mean, talk about quality film. Some amazing movies. The montages, the amazing storyline. You can't beat the 80s.
No. Well, do either of you watch the Goldbergs? I can't remember if I've asked you that before.
No.
Okay.
I haven't seen it.
The Goldbergs, it takes place in the 80s. And I mean, it's pure 80s nostalgia. And then it takes place in Jenkintown, Pennsylvania, which is a suburb of Philadelphia. So not only do you have the 80s references, but for someone like me, you get all of the Philadelphia references. It's awesome. And I mean, he pushes ABC and the studio to make it as authentic as possible.
Amazing.
So it's awesome. It's a fun show. I mean, it's your typical sitcom. Don't get me wrong. Like it's your typical formulaic sitcom. That being said, the 80s references are awesome.
I'll have to check it out.
Mm-hmm. I think I saw maybe one episode or something, because I know what you're talking about. It's So apparently I did a good job brainwashing my kids, like listening to 80s music when they were little, because 2 nights ago, 7 went to a party, and the theme was 80s prom, like fall formal kind of thing, where you get dressed up, but with something like bloody, or so he kind of threw blood all over his shirt and everything. But in any case, he came back from this party that was like 80s theme, and he was like, oh my God, I recognized all the songs. I was able to like sing all the songs. I was like, yep, my job here is done. So
you're welcome.
Yeah, exactly. So
nice.
I felt very proud at that moment.
As you should.
success.
So how's Jim going to transition this?
Don't know. I may not have a.
What are we talking about today?
So today's conversation, it's a follow-up from the conversation Jason and I had last week. So the episode last week focused on as a client, as you're getting recommendations from various vendors, agencies, and partners, do you know what's really driving those recommendations? Is it because your partner has your best interest in mind, or do they have their own interests in mind, such as being financially reimbursed for, say, a tool that they recommend you use? And part of the conversation we got into was like it dealt around the principles that you have and disclosing that kind of information and whatnot. So I thought a good follow-on episode to that would be as a company, how do you promote your principles that you stand on? How do you promote your values without it turning into a marketing gimmick? Because let's be honest, you have a lot of companies out there today promoting what they say are their values, but I really do think it's more or less a sales pitch, and time again, I feel it's proved out. Especially, I think a lot in the banking sector. Let's call it what it is. Um, at the end of the day, while they may say that you're at the center of what they do, it's ultimately, if they're a publicly traded company, Wall Street, investors, and ultimately making a profit, which there's nothing wrong with that. But, let's, be honest about what's really driving your decisions. So this is an episode where I kind of want to sit back a little bit and kind of pose that question and really hear from the two of you. The position you've been in going on almost 7 years at this point, trying to promote the values of your company without it coming across as a disingenuous sales pitch.
And I don't know if we've ever promoted it. Maybe that's part of it. In that I don't know that we've ever sat down and said, okay, what are our core values and how can we turn that into a marketing campaign? I don't know that we've ever talked about that. And so for us, I think it's just been about organically sharing what it is that we do and why we do it. Over the last couple of years, I think we've been a bit more comfortable, or maybe not comfortable is the right word. We've determined that it's a bit more important for us to start talking about that publicly, in that we've found that being open with that message has helped us to attract the right kind of employees and the right kind of companies to work with. But again, we've never sat down and thought about how can we spin this as a marketing message. And maybe that's not the right way to look at it. I don't know, but we've just never done that. And on the flip side of it, you've probably seen where companies have done that and they've gone out to their executives or whatnot, and they've said, okay, here's what we're standing for. Now go talk about it. And it just feels so inauthentic, right? You can tell that it's just too produced. And, we've always tried to stay away from that. We've wanted to just come out organically.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we made a conscious decision to do is to kind of have the balance between, obviously, the value that we produce for the clients that we engage with, the things we get paid for, so to speak, but also balancing that with, what we want to give for free, and to give back to the community that, has put us in this position to do what we love. And so, kind of giving back in different ways and helping others that are not necessarily our clients, but, finding ways to help within the ecosystem and to build things that are helpful to others, and to kind of share the love where possible. I think is kind of the path that helped us a lot, because again, we're not like going after specific marketing tactics, in a traditional way.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point in that for me, the talk is the easy part. You see lots of big brands that want to feel like they stand for something, that they're taking a position on something, or they're using something as a marketing tool, but it's talk, right? And I think it's what we've all come to hate about mission statements and what our core values are at companies. It's not something that you just print up and stick on a conference room wall. It comes down more to action. And so again, I think our focus has been less on how do we succinctly put this into words that we can print up and frame and put on the wall, and more about how does what the things that we have at our core inform everything that we do. And to Hila's point, come out in things like, what do we do to give back to the community? What things do, how is that core to what we're trying to do? And through that action, helping to educate the marketplace on what things are important to us and what aren't. And then there's other things that, for me personally, I'm just super passionate about talking about, to the point of upsetting people. And I know I do. It's not that I go out there to upset people, but things like the billable hour thing, I just think it's a broken system. And I'm coming from a place of being educated. I worked as a manager, as someone tasked out with building an organization, as an individual contributor, as a consultant, doing billable hours. And I'm like, I have the experience to say it's broken. And so, some of those things I'm just really passionate about talking about. But again, it's not something that Hila and I sat down to say, how can we use this stance of rejecting the billable hour as a marketing campaign, as a way to drive sales?
Yeah, we do. To be fair, we do, because of that structure, we do have the freedom to go several steps outside of like the scope of what we're supposed to do with our clients and our partners. And I think that that's kind of a big deal for us. So, to be fair, we have a special component that's working for us for that, where we're able to kind of have conversations about things that we may not be contracted to talk about or consider, so to speak. But I think there's value for that interaction, and it creates kind of a more, more of a broader consideration to what we can do beyond the current activities. So I think that is kind of one of the biggest things that we have advantage on.
And going back to how you queued this up, Jim, I think one of the biggest things is just authenticity, being authentic in how you stand up for the things that are important to you. I think goes a long way. I want to say it was Black Friday, but if it's not, someone can correct me, where Patagonia said that they were going to donate all online sales profits to some specific charity. And if that comes out as being inauthentic, I think people see right through that, right? They're like, this is just a gimmick, a ploy. But the fact that that was like their highest sales day ever, to me tells me that at least in their marketplace, it doesn't come across as a ploy. It comes across as being authentic. And that's what I think we strive for as well, is that the things that are really important to us, our culture and our values, I never want to cheapen them by putting them out there in such a way that people would look at it and say, it's just a marketing ploy, right? They're just trying to do it to get attention.
And you've mentioned Patagonia multiple times, not just on here, but just in our one-on-one conversations. So, I mean, I think it's then safe for me to assume that, you're drawn to the culture that they've built and the values that they espouse. What have they done to win you over, or again, making an assumption here, make you believe that they're authentic when it comes to the ideals that they discuss?
Yeah, and I think it's important to separate it, and that while I do align very much with Patagonia, I think it's a brand that even if you don't align with what they are standing for, and they're really activists in building things that are sustainable and taking care of our world that we live in, even if you don't believe in that stance, I think you can respect the company from the perspective that they took a stand, that they're putting their money where their mouth is. And again, whether you agree with them or not, I think it's really hard to not respect what it is that they are doing, because they've gone out of their way many, many times to say, we're going to do right by our employees, by our channel, by our customers, and ultimately we're going to make decisions that are best for our planet. And does that mean that they made less money at times? I'm sure it did, but they're also $1 billion+ company at this point. And so to me, that's the thing that I resonate with the most, is that they didn't walk the line, right? They didn't stand on the fence. They went very hard to one side and said, this is what we believe in, and this is what we're going to fight for. And if you don't like it and you don't want to buy from us because of that, fine. There are lots of other people that want to buy from us because of that. And they were never afraid to stand for something. And to me, I think that's, again, what has resonated with me the most, is that it's okay to stand for something and not have to be everything to everybody. And just be comfortable knowing that, you know what, you're going to piss some people off if you keep talking about how billable hours are evil. I'm like, I don't care. Like, if they don't want to work with us, if they don't want, that's fine. But there are going to be other people that will want to work with us for that specific reason. And then secondarily, just the whole idea of sustainability to me was important as we were thinking about building the company. A lot of the decisions, and I'm not going to try to come up with the exact quote from Yvonne about 100 years from now, but he talks about the decisions he's making, that, we're not just building for this quarter or for this year. And that's one of the main reasons we didn't go public, is we didn't want artificial goals to have to meet that were dictated by Wall Street. Our goals were about, how can we build a company that's going to preserve our way of life and the things that we value most 100 years from now. And we've really taken that to heart and thought about that as well, is that, we don't have arbitrary goals about, we have to double the size of the company every year. We grow at the rate the market tells us we should grow. And we do that because we want to have control of this and build it in a sustainable way, so that we don't put at jeopardy the things that we value. And then from my perspective, that's a company that we're all happy to come to work for every day.
I was worried that this podcast was gonna become all about Patagonia once you asked that question. I was like, oh no.
We could take it down a completely different path.
Right.
But I mean, it is such a great example, right? And it's not the only example. There's lots of other companies out there that we can cherry pick that have decided to take stances.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry,
no, I was going to say to pivot it a bit then. Instead of talking about maybe like other companies that have influenced you, I kind of want to go back and talk more about like the ones where maybe it was more disingenuous. Like I said, I keep thinking of it as a marketing gimmick. Have you ever, as an employee, worked for a company that set out that mission statement, or talked about, here are the values we stand for, and you either saw right through it or quickly came to realize that it's nothing but a pitch to win customers, keep employees satisfied and whatnot?
For sure. I mean, I'm not going to call out any by name, but that has definitely been the case. And I don't think in every case it's been deliberate in nature. But it's just the way of the beast, right? Like, well, we have to have a mission statement. We have to spend our time talking about this. And it's almost like just going through the actions. And oftentimes the frustration with that is that you spend so much time talking about it, and you sit in, these meetings with the executives of the company getting up there and saying, okay, now this is what we believe in. I remember one company I worked for, they drilled it home so much, and then they said something like, it's so important that you go and memorize these things. And they sent out an email like summarizing our core value and our mission statement. And I remember this really clearly. At the end of the meeting, they said, don't be surprised if you get a random phone call from the CEO one day quizzing you on these things. And I left that meeting thinking, how stupid is this? We're being forced to memorize a mission statement, and we're going to drone on about our core values. Shouldn't that be inherent in the way that we do business, and it be just so natural for us to talk about what it is we do and why we do it, rather than trying to memorize a mission statement? Anyway, that was one example that was burned really, really clearly into my memory, and has gone a long way in helping inform kind of my belief that it's not about mission statements. It's not about these things you print out and put on the wall. It's the action. It's how you do your work. It's, you say you're going to do it, and then you go and do it. I'm gonna have to pull up the cowboy code because I think that's one of the items, and I'll come back to that. So sorry, go ahead.
Well, all I could think of is did they also hand out like motivational cat posters to put up in the office?
You mean the one with the string that looks like this and the cat hanging like this and saying, "Hang in there, baby."
Yes. Yes. Hila, what about you?
Um, yeah, sure. I mean, I've been in places where it was more about kind of making sure that there's like rules and everything is clear and, um, kind of templatized to a certain degree to how we communicate with clients or you know anyone outside the company for that matter. I think that it's when I'm thinking of how our clients, when they think of pursuing an additional solution, or if they need help, or if they're trying to solve a problem, I doubt that they say, okay, well, let's evaluate, the values, the exact, structure.
And the reason why I wanted to talk about this is, from my personal perspective, I feel like everybody's jumping on some kind of cause these days, and some you can tell are legitimate, some you can tell they're not. But I think it's one of those things. If you're going to attach yourself to a cause or promote a certain set of values as a company, they better be truthful. You better be authentic about it, because if you're saying we stand for A, but then you're caught doing B, you know there's going to be disillusioned customers. You're going to lose more customers by being untruthful than if you just hadn't taken a stance at all. In my opinion, I know that's a very generic statement, but I mean, I've seen companies, and there's there's a local bank here that they've just got billboards everywhere. We're for you, and we're your local bank, and we're your this, and we're your that, and they promote that. But then several months ago, um, news broke about charges against a local politician. And again, this is all alleged. Um, where this local politician allegedly abused power, and then also kind of wrangled some executives and directors from this bank, and they went along with it. And I'm like, you promote yourselves as, we're for the people, we're your local bank, we're not the mega bank, we care about our customers. But then you go along with this when a local politician comes along and says, I need your help doing this. And again, all alleged. Nothing's been proven true or false yet. But still, I mean, to me, then there's a level of disillusionment that comes in, and you're like, okay, what do you say is truthful then?
Yeah, and again, I think coming down to actions speak louder than words is really at the core of this discussion. And I have a similar example. And maybe it's just I want to vent because I'm still upset that someone stole my air filter out of my car. But there's a local auto dealer here where I bought my Jeep from. And I've had multiple problems with them. One where I had my daughter take my Jeep in for one of the free oil changes that came with purchasing the car, and they strong armed her into buying a $35 cheap paper filter. And I called them up and I said, this car has 6,000 miles on it, and I'm the only driver of it. It doesn't need a new air filter. Why are you pushing my daughter into buying this machine? And they're like, she's an adult. She can make her own decision. And then I had another experience where I took it in for service, and someone stole my high-end air filter that I had put in it. And I called them up and I'm like, and they put it on me and they don't want to take responsibility. Their tagline is, we make the car buying experience simple because we're transparent and nice and we're your neighborhood dealer. Right. And I'm like, you can say that, but your actions are the opposite of all of that. Right. And maybe it works, and maybe it works on a large portion of the population, and that's why they do it. But to me, it just feels inauthentic, right? And whether you've done business with the company or not, I think a lot of people can feel if you're being authentic or not. And to me, it comes down to that action. So when I first started managing teams, I knew nothing about how to manage a team. And I think we've had a podcast about this in the past about individual contributors getting promoted to management and then management assuming, oh, well, you're smart. That's why we're promoting you. So you automatically know how to run a team. So we're not going to give you any training. I was in that position. And maybe Hila remembers this. Without having any kind of training, I needed some kind of framework for how I wanted to run the team. So being from out west and being around a lot of cowboys, I adopted the Code of the West, which is 10 rules of the West for how to run a team. And a couple of them really stand out in this conversation. One of those is talk less and say more. Meaning, again, talk is cheap. It's really easy to throw up that mission statement. What's really hard is actually living it. And then the other one is when you make a promise, keep it. And to me, that's the biggest downfall of kind of these corporate missions and taking a stand is, to me, you're making a promise. If you're going to go out and say, this is our mission, this is what we care about, then you're making a promise with us that you're going to keep that promise and you're going to fulfill that. But oftentimes, again, it's just words, right? It's just a marketing ploy. And you do that enough times, then it's like, what's the story where the sky is falling?
Chicken Little.
Yeah, Chicken Little, right? Like you kind of cry wolf so many times. And now I'm mixing a whole other story in with it, but like you don't follow through on it. You don't follow through on it enough times. You've kind of burned out your deposits with your customers, with the the industry as a whole. So again, like I feel like I'm hitting on this over and over again, but to me, it's really the most important part of the conversation that these core values, our principles, our mission statements, whatever you want to talk about it, why we do what we do, it's not something you sit down and come up with a tagline in a marketing meeting. It's how you choose to carry yourself and informs all of the decisions and actions you take as a business. And hopefully if you do it right, it flows down from the leadership to the employees to embody that and continue to spread that. I think that's probably the biggest measure of success in, are you being authentic or not? If your employees are taking that and organically extending that message, you're doing something right. If they're only willing to talk about it because you formalized a tweet and sent out an email and said, okay, everybody go tweet about this, you're doing something really wrong.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned something very specific, which tells you when it's hollow. When you start seeing the multiple variations of the same tweet talking about what the company means and what the company stands for, you know that it's forced, it's artificial, it's not genuine and authentic.
No, you're absolutely right, and I'm going to try to multitask here because there was a Twitter conversation that I had where this came up, and I think that the question was, I'm going to have to look it up, but it really came down to authenticity. I think it's such a differentiator in business that when you find companies that are authentic, you just want to be a part of it. And again, sometimes you fully align and sometimes you don't. Again, going back to Patagonia, it's hard to not respect what they're doing and be at least affected by their energy, even if you're not fully on board with what their social mission is, because there are just so few examples of companies that are at that level of authenticity. I don't know, this isn't the tweet I was looking for, but apparently on April 8th, I tweeted, we have brainwashed people into believing that authenticity and transparency shouldn't be part of doing business. It's unfortunate life is way too short to play these bullshit corporate games. Let's be real. Let's be authentic. apparently I've been thinking about this, but I'm trying to find, okay, here it is. So there was a question that was put out on Twitter that said, what do you do that's hard for people to copy? How can you raise the barrier of entry? What's your moat? my response to it was, what's really hard for our competitors to copy is our authenticity. That was my response. And do you want to take a guess at what the response back to that was, to my response?
Stop being so authentic.
No, the response back was, yeah, but anybody can be authentic.
No, they can't.
I'm like, sure. I mean, in theory, every company can be authentic, but there are very, very few businesses that actually are. And so until that changes, to me, that's what I see as our biggest thing that our competitors simply can't copy. Is sure they can be, but in talk they can say that, right? It's very easy for them to say, yeah, we're authentic, but it's really, really difficult for them to actually back that up with action.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things this conversation made me think of is Gary Vaynerchuk's the thank you economy.
Yeah.
I mean, the biggest part of it he talked about is with the communication tools that people have today, it's leveled the playing field. Because if you go back 100 years, 150 years, you had a small town and you had the local butcher, the local seamstress, the local barber, and if they had to be on the top of their game because if word traveled quickly throughout, the town. And he's like, we're back to that point now with the communication tools that people have. It's very easy for something to go viral. And if it's, you're promoting your company as one thing and then how you act actually gets out, that could be incredibly damaging.
Yeah, I was talking to someone the other day and they asked me, why do you put so much effort into putting things out at the level of quality that you do? You could get by with doing so much less than that. Why are you so focused on doing it the right way? And I said, because our action is all we have. We don't have paid sales, we don't have paid marketing. Our work is coming to us as a direct result of our action. And so if we ever compromised on that, to your point, Jim, like if we ever got caught not living up to our ideals, that's going to directly impact what it is that we do, right? Because people, at least as of today, and that's after almost 7 years of doing business, people work with us because we do what we say we're going to do. And if we ever compromised on that, we put ourselves in a very precarious situation.
Mm-hmm. And it seems to me, I want to touch on one more thing before we start to wrap up. And you had mentioned it early on, like there was no for the two of you in particular. When you started the company, when you started to promote the company, there was no, say, concerted effort to say, this is what we believe in, and these are our values, these are the principles we stand upon. It's been something more organic. And that's an observation. And now I'm kind of stumped on the question I want to follow up with on it, because, obviously you would think the question would be, well, was that intentional or was it truly organic that, you never really thought about promoting principles? It's just kind of come out of who you are.
I mean, I think it's a combination of both. Wow, my hair's cool. I think it's a combination of both. But I think at our core, that is just something that both Hila and I are, right? When we decided to start the company, we didn't sit down and think about, what should we value? What should our mission be? That was already part of who we are. Now, the intentionality of how do we expose that? How do we help weave that into the way that our employees work? That's something that for the first several years of doing business was very organic. The last couple years, we've been much more focused on being a bit more intentional in how we do that. And really, it's only been the last few months where exposing that to the greater market, it's taken on a bit more importance to be intentional. But that's not saying that it didn't exist before. It was never either a priority or something that we decided to focus on. I guess that's the same thing up until this point, but organically, it was always there. So we benefited by that just coming out again through our actions and backing up what we say we do. But I think there's definitely something to the intentionality of it. Because one of the mistakes that I made was that I assumed that, well, everybody's just going to get it. And that's not true. You have to be intentional, and you have to have some design in how you choose to verbalize that, both internally and externally, so that the narrative has the proper framing that it deserves. But again, if it's something that you're trying to invent while intentionally taking that to the market, I think you've got it backwards. It needs to be at the core of who you are first. Hila?
Yeah, I think it's definitely at the core. We always thought about how we pursue what we do as a way to kind of figure out how to help the client. It's not about us. It's not even sometimes about our core values at all. It's about how can we create solutions, and how do we help our clients. So it's about being immersed and in their business problems, in their challenges, in their career path, and trying to help that way, and being kind of genuine about actually helping them, and kind of, to a certain degree, leaving behind what, all this strategic thinking of how we should run a company and this, that, and the other. It all needs to be in the context of supporting, the outcomes for our clients. So that's kind of the genuine string that is who we are, that I think helps us in that path.
Jim, I'd like to kind of turn it back onto you as looking at things from an employee perspective, because I'm really interested in, because I obviously have my perspective of what I think works and what doesn't, and kind of put myself back in the mindset of being an employee. But I'm really interested in your perspective as far as how can you tell as an employee. We've talked a lot about brands, and you mentioned the local bank, but from an employee, how do you know, or how do you feel what's real and authentic? If your boss is saying, here's our mission statement, here's the things we value, what filter or lens do you put that through as an employee to really understand, is this authentic, or is this just part of doing business, part of a marketing ploy, what have you?
Yeah, I mean, I like to think I've actually got a pretty good bullshit meter, and can pick up when someone's just piling it on. So I think it starts with the person that it's coming from. But I think, like many, the first red flag is when there's organized team activities around values and mission statement and core beliefs and things like that. And I've been a part of a couple of those, and sometimes like you just kind of felt dirty afterwards. Like, okay, like, there was one, we went through the multiple exercises around the values that we believe in, and what it means to be an employee and a customer and a this and a that. But then I could name individuals that were completely breaking those. And and there was no repercussions, for that. So that was the first sign for me that it was that it was there for show. It was to make employees feel good. And I want to go back to, like, we were talking with Jen a couple weeks ago when we were talking about, like, marketing pixel hell, right? And one of the things I wrapped up with is avoid that feeling I'm doing good sometimes, because that's part of the road to ruin. I feel like I'm making progress for this client when you may either be pigeonholing yourself, or you're missing the forest for the trees and working on little things and not actually getting the big stuff done, et cetera. I think the same thing there. Like, if there's rah meetings about it and you feel good, if that quickly fades, then it's a load of crap. If it's something where, and I'm not to say, like, whenever you have that good feeling, it's it's not authentic. It's in the everyday, right? It's in the everyday where you're not, every day is not going to be a great day at work. right? It's called work for a reason. It's not called fun. I think we're in a great place because we can actually enjoy what we do. But that being said, there's still rough days. And if when you have those rough days, if you can fall back on what's been discussed and someone can help pick you up, then I think that that's a good sign. And I know I'm starting to ramble, but it's those little things that you pick up outside of meetings, outside of conversations, that you can look back and say, you know what we talk about is true because I was in a really crappy mood. I was able to give someone a call. We were able to talk through it. We didn't necessarily reference the mission statement. We didn't reference the principles,
Right.
but it was, looking back upon it, you could tell it was a core of the conversation.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of a great illustration of what we've through this entire discussion is it's action, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
are we going to are we going to do what we said we were going to do?
Yeah.
And that's really the most important thing. With that said, let me clarify something that I do think it's valuable to have the discussions, and I do think it's valuable to actually write them down. And if you want to print them out on a fancy poster and put them up, that I'm not saying that that's wrong. I'm saying that that has to come as an artifact of already having that discussion or deep down belief of what it is that we do and who we are.
Agreed.
Right. And if you're flipping that scenario, then you're coming up with something that you believe in, and then you're going to try to back into that. It's almost like saying, well, what cause should we take up because it would be good for our company? How's that ever going to work? Right. It should be, these are things that we're passionate about. These are issues that we want to solve. These are social changes that we want to help drive. And then let's that inform why we're doing what we're doing. And if we want to create a pretty little mission statement to print out from that, awesome. Let's do that. But let's get the order of that right.
Agreed. It's and that's what I was. That also goes along with what I was talking about with like the organized team activities around said mission statement. If you get everyone hyped up at big group meetings about what the principles are, but they go out the window the minute things get a little bit tough, and bad behavior is still rewarded, or behavior that seems counter to it, then it's not worth anything.
I want to pat ourselves on the back a little bit based on on that, because you're right, and it's really really difficult. And was it last time or two episodes ago where I shared the social experiment that we did at BYU with the video camera and paying
It was
people
last
to
week.
when money comes into play, that's going to really determine who you are. What is at your core? Because as money is there and as money is taken away, those are opportunities for you to question your ideals and your ethics and the things that you value. And I think it's one of the things that I'm the most proud of. And maybe Hila is going to take all the credit because she had to talk me off the ledge countless times in those first couple of years where money was extremely tight. And I'm like, what the hell are we doing? Like, we have no money coming in. And it would have been so easy for us to compromise on our ideals, because we could have taken money to do things that we agreed that we were never going to do. But we didn't have any money coming in. And I don't know if it was me or Hila that said it, but that said something like, but if we compromise now, just because we're in this type spot, when are we ever going to stop compromising? And to me, I think the fact that we were able to struggle through some of those really difficult times without compromising on our ideals helped solidify the things that were important to us, that we were never going to compromise on those things. Again, I think that's the true test of character. That our when times are tough, are our ideals and our company mission going to go out the window? Eli, you can take credit for that.
Fine. It was all me.
And you know what? I think kind of summarizing everything, it comes back to what we mentioned early on: actions speak louder than words. So honestly, I think that's probably a good place there to wrap up with that story there of like,
Yeah.
What are your values? Don't compromise on them, because I think you do bring up a good point. The minute you start compromising, where do you stop?
Yeah, because if you do it once, it's easy to continue to say, well, we did it that one time, so, what's it going to hurt if we do it again?
Let's bend the rules here, and then let's
Yeah.
bend the rules there.
Yep.
Cool.
Then you end up with some weird Netflix documentary about how you're this like creepy company that just does a bunch of bizarre shit, and I don't know that any of us want to go down that. I don't want to go down that path.
Yeah, no. Well, it's great. Did you ever read John Carreyrou's Bad Blood about Theranos and Elizabeth Holmes?
No, but that's the documentary I was thinking about.
I figured because there's a couple of them. I think I've watched that one. There was an ABC documentary. I mean, yeah, like
I love that documentary.
It's good stuff.
It makes me feel super uncomfortable.
Agreed.
Maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, no, good discussion.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. So, any other closing statements? Anything you want to wrap up with?
Be authentic. It is a differentiator. Even if the naysayers say otherwise, I guarantee you, if nothing else, if you're authentic, that's going to put you in rarefied air and put you in a good place to be successful.
Good point.
Very well said. So, mic drop moment. So with that, if anybody doesn't have anything else, we'll go ahead and wrap up there, and I'll catch you both later.
See ya.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of 33 Tangents. If you enjoyed what you heard, please rate and review the show on your favorite podcast aggregator so others can find us. If you would like to reach us, you can do so by emailing podcast@33sticks.com or on the web at 33tangents.33sticks.com. 33 Tangents is a production of 33 Sticks, an analytics boutique.